Good morning, church family. This is the fourth week of our Lent series. Today, for many of us, is Move Out Day. For most of us, we spent the week getting our houses ready for this little golf tournament that comes to our community each week. I have my list here, which you may not be able to see the details, but it starts off as a printed sheet from our computer, and then we start to make scribble marks on it and add things to it. We have yellow highlight, red highlight, and we make our way down the list. This last week in preparation to me is always the most intense. For one thing, you have to do things that you don't like to do, that you put off. For me, it's the cleaning of the fountain here, which is just outside of our patio. I leave it till the very end because I hate it, because there is a thick, black, stinky sludge that builds up at the bottom. Well, this week I had to tend to that. Additionally, we always have interesting little mishaps that take place in our family's life as we get ready for Masters. Last night, somehow a blue ballpoint pen ended up in our dryer with a load of clothes. Not only did it ruin the load of clothes that was in there, it caused our dryer to be blue. And it took some strong chemicals and a lot of elbow grease to get that dryer in tune for this upcoming week. I do pay attention to this final list of jobs that needs to be done until 12 o'clock on Saturday. And then I throw the list away and I tell myself, the little things don't matter anymore. I have to start focusing on that which is most important. Because when you get near the end, it's that which is the most important needs to be the focus. I don't look at hallway dust anymore. I don't look at dust on bookshelves. What I begin to think through is I'm going to go buy more food for the welcome baskets and fill our fridge with more food and drink, because that's what I think the guests pay the most attention to. So when you get to the end, you have to focus on that which is most important. We actually see that in the life of Jesus. As we've been making our way through the Gospel of Matthew through this Lent series, we started off in chapter 10 in week 1. Then we made our way through chapters 14 through 18 in week 2. And then in week 3, Luke Nade taught through 19 to 23. The Passion picks up in 26 through 28 at the end of the book. So here we are at week 4. We've got 2 little chapters where Jesus is nearing the end of his teaching ministry, and he begins to focus on that which he thinks is of utmost importance. So we should all be asking ourselves, what is it that Jesus teaches that he thinks is the most important matter for us to understand? He teaches through 24 and 25 at the Mount of Olives. It's called the Olivet Discourse. In chapter 24 and in 25, he talks through the end of times. In chapter 24, he tells his disciples about the prophecies of old and how they point to the end of times and his second coming. In chapters 25, he shows them what this will be like through parables. 3 parables to be exact. You have the parable of the 10 virgins, you have the parable of the talents, and you have the parable of the sheep and goats. Now today, I'm going to spend our time looking at the parable of the talents. 3 items of business to understand before we get to the text itself. First, what is a parable? I love William Barclay's brief description of a parable. It's an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. The second thing you need to understand about talents is when we read the parable about talents, our minds go to the modern meaning of the word talent, one's ability. But a talent, as the original hearers would have heard that, they would have understood that's a weight, approximately probably 70 pounds or so. So when the master is giving a talent to his workers, he's giving them 70 pounds or so of silver. Some estimate that to be about $1 million for each talent. The second thing you need to understand as you're working through a parable is often there's 3 characters. In ours today, there are actually 4, but 2 are combined to 1. So we have the master, that's the first character, that represents the Lord. Then you have good servants, which is the first 2 servants, the one who receives 5 talents and then 2 talents. And then finally you have the wicked servant who received 1 talent. We're going to flip to full screen here and you're going to see a table. Again, remember, this is going to build up to what I believe is the point of this parable in the teaching of Christ that he thought was of utmost importance. So beginning in verse 14, this is Jesus talking. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. So what we see here first is the response of these servants. What did the servants' hand do with that which they were entrusted? The good servants, we were told, as you see, is they put his money to work. The wicked servant, on the other hand, it says, dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. In other words, he put it to death. Next verse is verses 19 through 21. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things, and I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Now, that same exact story was told in the next verse about the one with 2 talents. But here's the point. The point is, what was the master's response to the good servants? What did he say of them? His heart towards them was well done. And then his hand, his actions were that he opened them up. And he said, come and share your master's happiness. Now let's look at what happens, the response of the wicked servant and how the master responded. Jesus said, then the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, so I was afraid and went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here's what belongs to you, his master replied. You wicked, lazy servant. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So there's a lot of words here, and we learn a lot about the servant. First of all, what did the servant, what was his view of the master? It says that he viewed him as hard. So therefore it says, I was afraid or fearful. That was his heart towards the master. In response to this view of him and his life lived before him, what was the master's heart toward him? It says that he viewed him as wicked, and therefore he cast him out, where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now, just to fill this chart out, it's appropriate that if the wicked servant's fearful in parables, the other one contrasts that. So one's fearful, we then know that the good servant is trustful. The wicked servant saw the master as hard, therefore the good servant saw the master as gracious. Last verse that's worth considering. It's an interesting verse. For whoever has will be given more. As you read that, it begs the question, for whoever has what will be given more? And it goes on to say, whoever does not have, who does not have what, is what we should be asking. As I thought about this week, the best explanation I would have is that the good servant has faith, and the wicked servant does not. Follow along with the way that the story goes with the good servant. The good servant has faith, and therefore he sees the Lord as gracious. He lives a life trusting the Lord, putting that which has been given to him to work. And at the end of his life, which Jesus is teaching, at the end of his life, at the second coming, the Lord will communicate to this one, "Well done," and open his hands and invite him to share the joy and happiness of eternity with him. But for this wicked servant who does not have faith, who sees the Lord as hard, who lives in fear before him, who puts to death that which he's been given, this wicked one, we're told, will be cast out and separated from the Lord. So here we have at the end of the Lord's life, Jesus is saying, this is what's of utmost importance. This is the one truth that you need to keep before you to live well. To be ready for Christ's return, one must respond to Christ by faith, which will allow them to see the Lord, trust the Lord, and live for the Lord. As you conclude your time together, I've written 3 questions for you to consider. The first question asks about the gift of faith and what you're most thankful for. The second question has to do with ensuring that we have a proper view of God in its role of being a follower of Christ. And the third question deals with how do we actually live our faith out? Knowing that that would be a question on our hearts, Jesus teaches through that in the parable of the sheep and the goats. There's a particular phrase I want you to discuss as a class. At the end of that discussion, your class leader will end in prayer and send you on your way. We're thankful for you being with us here. We look forward to the next 2 Sundays, Palm Sunday and Easter, in celebrating the resurrected Lord. Look forward to seeing you soon. God bless.